Welcome to the Kinky Connoisseur, where we talk about love, lust, consent, and everything BDSM, kink, and sex. Today we are starting our consent series, where we're going to be discussing consent as a whole, not only in BDSM and kink, but in society in general when it comes to sex. And in particularly talking about MeToo essay allegations. And what has everyone been discussing this week? Russell Brand and his essay allegations. I will jump into it and discuss the allegations against him thus far and my take on things, and just the overall zeitgeist of how we are perceiving MeToo allegations. So, let's get into it. About a week ago today, as I am recording this, Russell Brand went on his YouTube channel with a short video basically saying that essay allegations were going to be coming and that he unequivocally denounced them and said that they were false. And then, of course, the next day, these bombshells hit of multiple women coming forward, one of them particularly having a text conversation between him where he basically had removed a condom during sex when she had explicitly said not to, and he was forcing himself on her. All of the women who have come forward anonymously thus far. One of them also said she was 16 years old when she started seeing Brand, even though that is the age of consent in the UK, so therefore he was not breaking any statutory rape laws. And she claims that he quote-unquote groomed her. There are other women that are saying that he exposed himself to them, things like that he pushed the envelope in situations that they claim were unconsensual. He claims all of these encounters were consensual. So as with many essay allegations, it's a bit of a he said, she said. Now, a lot of people are looking at these damning text messages and stating that they seem a bit fishy, they seem to be doctored. Why can't we just have the entire undoctored text presented in the article? And I agree. I think it is always weird when they edit pieces of evidence so that they're able to control a very specific narrative that they want the reader to have, as opposed to just letting the facts speak for themselves and letting us read the entire text messages in their entirety so we can make up our own mind as to what exactly went on in those messages. It would be nice also if we could see all of these sources that they are claiming is where they received these text messages, and that all of these things are correct and not falsified. That would just rule so many question marks out if journalists started doing this. If we were just able to see everything up front, undoctored, have all of the sources readily available for us to decipher through if we choose to. And certainly other YouTubers have talked about this, such as Tug and Colonel Kurtz. We want to have more evidence before we can damn Russell Brand and say, yes, he committed these crimes when these text messages seem doctored. I think that is all valid. What I do want to say, though, is I don't want to necessarily jump the gun and think that these texts were purposely doctored in a nefarious way. We don't know that. And when it comes to essay allegations in general, it's just such a sticky situation. On one hand, I don't want to believe that Russell Brand is capable of essay, and yet simultaneously, I don't want to believe that all of these women coming forward are complete liars, or at least some of them are liars, right? I don't necessarily want to believe that either. So no matter how you slice it, in any kind of these essay allegations cases, someone is lying, someone is telling the truth, or what I think happens in many cases, whether they are potentially celebrity cases or cases that are in the general population, is that people fall into a weird gray zone when it comes to consent. Maybe they consented to one thing, maybe they didn't explicitly consent to something else, but their partner thought it was okay because they didn't say no. And then suddenly, there is a question mark as to what was actually consented to in a heated sexual situation. In my opinion, this, I'm sure, happens quite frequently in our society. And I think in traditional normative vanilla society, I think that's something that, as a BDSM practitioner, vanilla society can learn a lot from. Consent is something that is negotiated and evolves throughout a sexual situation. It's not just a one and done, yes, I've consented. It can also be fluid and you can change your mind on things. I think women need to feel empowered to speak up, whether it's in the middle of sex, not just in the beginning of sex, if they don't want something to happen. Likewise, though, it shouldn't just fall all on the woman to make these boundaries clear. I think men also need to learn how to have just a diverse vocabulary of how to talk to women and ask for consent. Because that is something that we as a society are not taught at all. We're not taught how to properly communicate with each other in intimate settings, let alone with someone who is of the opposite gender, who is going to be thinking differently than we are and perceiving things differently than they are, depending on their learned experiences in their life. I think men should learn to speak up and ask, like, hey, is this still okay? Hey, are you feeling comfortable with this? Hey, are we good to proceed? Especially if the woman is potentially displaying signs of discomfort or signs of, hey, I want to do something different, but she is not feeling empowered enough to speak up. I think the guy also needs to speak up so that we are both held accountable for our actions. But at the same time, a man should not be expected to read a woman's mind. That is not okay either. To say, oh, well, I didn't want him to do this, but I didn't speak up, or I didn't make anything known, and therefore the man should have read my mind, and therefore it's his fault. There needs to be a balance. And I think that is incredibly important, and that is the only way we're going to be able to get out of these sticky situations. So what is my opinion on the Russell Brand allegations? Well, I don't think there's enough evidence that has come out either way. I certainly don't think the texts are damning enough. I think there's a lot of editing that had gone down on the text messages, and therefore that does make me feel suspicious of, why are they cutting the text up? Can't we just read it in its entirety? Therefore, to me, that's not a legitimate form of evidence to convict someone that they took off a condom and raped someone. At the same time, so I don't think there's enough evidence to convict him of anything in the public eye. But at the same time, there's not enough evidence yet to say, oh, these women are lying. Oh, these women must be trying to slander him for some political gain, some political conspiracy theory. I don't really believe that either. So I think time will tell what my opinion on this will be. And honestly, I've always kind of liked Russell Brand. I like his dirty, sardonic sense of humor. I love that type of humor. I think we need more of that in our society. We need to not take each other so seriously. And yet at the same time, he was a self-proclaimed sex addict. He had addictive tendencies. It's rumored that he had slept with over 1,000 women. I'm sure not every single person that you sleep with, if you slept with that volume of people, is going to be happy with maybe the situation. Maybe they thought, oh, the sex wasn't that great, or oh, not what I was imagining, or I thought I was going to be Mrs. Brand, and I wasn't. I was just a one-night stand to him, and feeling used. even if consent was all there and nothing consensually was violated at all, you can still have regrets. But regrets are not rape. Therefore, I'm going to be curious to see how this continues to unfold, and I'm going to continue to make updates on this, but I don't think there's enough evidence either way for me to say that Brand is innocent and that these women are lying, or that these women are telling the truth and Brand is lying. I'm going to continue to have an open mind. I am someone that has had personal experience with SA allegations against a former partner. He was falsely accused by his former, she wasn't his wife, but she basically was. She lived with him for like 7 years. They had a child together. He helped raise her children. She had children with some other man that was out of the picture, and he basically became the father figure of those kids. She then decides to take their baby across state lines and say that he is a rapist and an abuser of her and a child abuser, and he had to have a very bitter court battle, and she slandered his name, and he was MeToo'd, and he was a regular everyday person. And I can go into detail about the story in another video, but all I can say is I understand that this is a real thing that happens to real people, where people are falsely accused. At the same time, there was a lot of grays in that case. His partner was not a perfect person, but he wasn't a rapist. So on a personal note, I am very familiar with SA allegations. I have spoken on Colonel Kurtz's channel about the SA allegations against Marilyn Manson and how I think those are false due to the BDSM type abuse allegations and how I debunked them. I'm going to do a more full in-depth video on those as well. But when it comes to Russell Brand, I'm going to continue to dig deeper, and I'm going to make some more videos on him. I think he's a fascinating person. I don't necessarily agree with his politics, but I do think he's a very intelligent, very complicated person that has had a whirlwind of history behind him, and I don't think anything is just cut and dry, black and white. So as much as I would love to say I think he's completely innocent of all of this, I can't say that yet, and I might never be able to say that. We shall see. I listened to one of his stand-up comedies the other day. I never actually gone through and listened to a whole show of his. When he became famous, I was quite a bit younger. He was not on my radar, really, until he, married Katy Perry and then divorced her, and all of that was really when I was becoming of age and I suddenly knew who he was and how he popped up in all of these films. I find his comedy to be very interesting. I really enjoy it, and it's something that I hope he's innocent of. That's the thing. When you like a celebrity's work, when you laugh at their jokes, you don't want to believe that behind that joke there is something more sinister, right? Even though there could be. People are very complex. So I'm going to continue to dive into the Russell Brand case, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and what you think so far is happening in the case. Do you think Russell Brand is being framed? Or do you think he's finally being shown his just desserts? Please subscribe, and I hope you have a fucking fantastic day. Bye.